the Saints make just enough defensive plays to grind out a win in the Superdome. Tonight, we'll break down what went right with our Saints analyst, Nick Underhill. LSU finds a star in Ponchatoula's TJ Finley, the story of his dynamic debut from Baton Rouge. And the Pelicans have their man. We'll get local and national opinions on the hiring of Stan Van Gundy. Those stories and more tonight on 4th Down on 4. For the second week in a row, the Saints got a dramatic defensive stop in the closing minutes to seal a win. I'm Doug Mouton. Welcome to 4th Down on 4. And for the second time in 3 weeks, the Saints ran the ball extremely effectively. The offense looks different than what we've been used to, and today it worked in a big way. Ricardo LeCompte reports from the Superdome.
The Saints usually sharp following a bye week. A 3-1 record over the last 4 seasons. The time off helped an offense which hasn't quite executed at the level it's accustomed to during the first 5 games of the season. The Saints started with a 14-play scoring drive against the Panthers, which took half the first quarter to complete.
That was big. Long drive, too. I didn't realize that drive was about 10 minutes, so it was great to get the ball, go down there and score the first drive.
The effectiveness carried over into the second drive, also finished off with a touchdown. And the O was at its quintessential best on the final drive of the first half. Trailing 17-14 with 1:37 to go, Drew Brees put on a clinic on how to run a 2-minute offense. Number 9, a perfect 6 for 6 for 71 yards, as he found Deontay Harris to score a crucial TD with 5 ticks remaining.
2 minutes, I think I'll put us against any defense. I mean, I think we practice it more than anything. So going in there, we're confident. We know the looks we want to get to, and I mean, we just had to execute.
That probably was a game-winning drive that we just didn't know it at the time.
The drive giving the offense the confidence to know it's turning the corner. New Orleans balanced in the run and pass, 1 time of possession, and converted 10 of 12 third downs against the Panthers. And this was all done with a short-handed receiving corps. In fact, a rookie, Marquez Callaway, led the black and gold in targets, 10, and receiving yards, 75, on 8 catches.
And next man up mentality, you know, we go in each week practicing, preparing for anything, and that's what happened this week.
We felt optimistic about having him. You know, fortunately, we've been able to find some players like that.
Unlikely names stepping up in place of Mike Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. The Saints knew Thomas would not be available to play after he injured his hamstring during practice on Wednesday. But Sanders' positive COVID-19 test on Thursday threw a wrench in their game plan. Sean Payton said afterwards it was a, quote, late night Thursday, working until 3 a.m. developing a new game plan without Sanders. But they came up with one, and Brees and the other players executed it.
I'll be honest, it's difficult, you know, because you got to sit there and look at the call sheet, and you got to look at, you know, the personnel groupings and figure out how you're going to piece it all together. And at the end of the day, put them in the best positions to succeed, right? And it all goes with my thought process, too, is kind of knowing where guys are, knowing the little things that I can do throughout the course of the game can help them, right, to instill confidence in them, to allow them to play fast. I just can't say enough about the job that those guys did stepping up.
While the Saints figured out how to function on offense, the struggles still came on defense. Communication issues in the secondary, like with this 74-yard strike in the second quarter, Teddy Bridgewater finding a wide-open DJ Moore. And red zone defense, ineffective. But just like in the win against the Chargers, the Saints made a timely play late to secure a win. Late in the fourth quarter, up 3, with the Panthers driving, Marcus Davenport sacked Bridgewater on 3rd down. The sack forced the Panthers to try a 65-yard field goal, and Joey Sly's attempt came up a yard short of tying the game.
It was just one of them things, you know, we drew it up, and we had to execute, and that was just mainly it. You know, from there, you just got to execute.
You got to rise up and be ready to meet the challenge. In the past 2 weeks, we were able to do that. That's going to help us a lot, you know, as far as confidence and motivation and building as we go down the stretch.
The Saints not a finished product coming off the bye, but some solid foundation for them to build on at 4-2. Reporting at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, Ricardo Lecomte, 4th Down on 4.
All right, joined by our Saints analyst, Nick Underhill. Nick, let's start with what turned out to be the most important play of the game, the Marcus Davenport sack before the field goal. We've seen Davenport in his 2 weeks back make a difference in both games. We thought it would make a difference. It really has, hasn't it?
Yeah, he has. And look, I think he's been the best pass rusher on the team the last couple of weeks. And he came up in a huge moment here in this game. And I think just thematically for the team overall, just to get that play at the end of the game, and also in the last game to make a last-second play to save the game, I think it shows some character for a defense that's struggling to really get a lot of things going for it. But the fact that they're staying in the games until the very end and not giving up and continuing the fight shows that they have the right mentality to try to find their way through these struggles. Now, will they actually find the solutions to these busted coverages and these big plays that they're giving up every week? You know, that's to be determined. You would have liked to see that better coming out of the bye. But I think that just showing that, making those plays at the end is a huge deal for a team that's struggling in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it was Marcus Davenport this week, Marshawn Lattimore's tackle last week. And look, I thought the other big positive was the way the Saints ran the ball. This is 2 of the last 3 games, 2 of these wins where they have really, really run it effectively.
Yeah, and in this one, it was a lot of big runs and good blocking on the inside. Cesar Ruiz has been up and down week to week. This was an up game for him, and you saw some of them inside zone runs again worked really well. And 2 weeks ago when he was locked in and hitting his assignments the right way, they played really well on those runs too. So when he's going well, you see a difference. And Andrew Speed also, I thought, had a really good game. And you saw some plays from him out in space where he was leading the way, and he had some pretty dramatic blocks where he was just kind of tossing guys around. So those guys led the way. And then Latavius Murray and Alvin really did a really good job getting the yards that were there. And, you know, of course, in Alvin's case, he's always getting a little bit extra. And this was another huge game for him. And I think just every week, non-quarterback, he's the best offensive player in the NFL right now, and I think that's really not a debatable point. And for them to come out and execute the way they did without their top 2 wide receivers is incredible. Like, they shouldn't have looked as good as they looked this week. And I think Drew Brees has really put to rest the narrative about his demise. And, you know, those early reactions, you know, I don't know about you, Doug, but I needed more than maybe 3 quarters to make a determination on if Drew Brees' career was over. A lot of people seem to jump into the river right away after week 1, but they've gotten better. Their timing issues have gotten figured out, and they're playing really, really well now. And I think going into the stretch, you know, we'll see if it continues. Chicago on the road, they'll probably be without Mike again. They'll probably be without Emmanuel Sanders again. That's going to be a little bit of a tougher game. But the way they're playing, I think that we've seen enough to know that Brees is good enough to get the job done. The offense is getting better. And, you know, I just don't think we're at that point where it's ready to jump off a cliff.
What we are seeing, though, it would seem, is a different offense, and I think all of us are sort of adjusting to that. We're seeing an offense that, at its best, is going to be balanced. And today, more than anything else, what they did well was balance the run and the pass, and they were able to hit a lot of short and intermediate passes because of how well they were running the ball, right?
Yeah, Drew didn't go down the field in this game. There were no passes over 20 yards. And that's the thing that, you know, when they aren't doing well, it's something that stands out. When things are in rhythm and they're hitting them and they're moving the ball well, you don't notice the lack of that deep pass. He was 8 of 9 on passes between 10 to 20 yards, at least by the way I charted it during the game. So, yeah, I mean, when they get that rhythm going and they get that flow going, it's jazz. And I think a lot of weeks it's felt more like classical music. You're reading the sheet music, you're playing it, it's mechanical, and everything's, you know, difficult and rigid. And you get to that end result and it's 30 points. But it's not fun getting there. I think this was a game where it was more in the flow. It was free flow and it felt good. You know, they looked like the Saints. And when the Saints are at their best, they're worked into that groove. And when they hit that groove, they're a really hard team to stop.
They are a hard team to stop, and they were definitely a hard team to stop today. Nick Underhill, terrific stuff. You read his stuff on NewOrleans.football. Nick always has a ton of great stuff every week. We're back with more 4th Down on 4 in a minute. TJ Finley's debut was lights out. Andrew Dope reports from Baton Rouge next as a star is born. Tulane can't stop UCF as the Green Wave defensive struggles continue. And later, the Van Gundy fit in New Orleans. Stick with us for more 4th Down on 4.
4th Down on 4 is sponsored by Dornax, family owned and operated since 1947.
4th Down on 4 has the all-star coverage you need with expert analysis and stories that go beyond the scoreboard. Join the Eyewitness Sports team Sunday night at 10:30 on Channel 4.
Sponsored by Dornax, family owned and operated since 1947.
All right, before we move on to LSU, I'm calling a timeout. Actually, I'm calling a quick 20. I had the standings backwards. That was me who typed that up. The Saints are 4-2. Carolina is 3-4. I noticed it as we hit the break, and it was too late to take it back. Saints are 4-2, a half game behind Tampa Bay. I apologize for mistyping the NFC South standings. All right, on to LSU. The Tigers took major steps forward, both offensively and defensively Saturday night. The Tigers' D still had its share of lapses, but there was marked improvement, and their true freshman quarterback was a hit. Andrew Doak reports from Baton Rouge.
A terrific win for LSU, 52-24.
The one thing that LSU proved Saturday is that they're not done yet. Many wrote the Tigers off after a stunning loss to Missouri, and speaking honestly, you could understand why. But Saturday they did something equally surprising. Starting a true freshman quarterback, the Tigers' offense lit it up.
And he's got a first down ball.
In the absence of Miles Brennan, Ponchatoula's TJ Finley was a baller. From the first drive, he showed off a powerful arm with zip and accuracy, and the Tigers' offense didn't skip a beat.
How about a touch?
Now, originally, the plan was for the Tigers to play both Finley and their other true freshman QB, Max Johnson. But that blueprint was tossed out once Orgeron saw Finley heating up.
He was on fire. I was planning on playing TJ the first quarter and playing Max the second quarter if I could. And see who the best one was to end the game. But TJ got hot, and I told that to both of them young men. I said, I'm going to try to play both of y'all, but one of you is hot, I'm not taking you out the game, and TJ was hot.
And that was the case from the get-go. On LSU's opening drive, the Tigers scored on a methodical 16-play series, and Finley was given the ground support Brennan never received in LSU's previous two losses. John Emery and Ty Davis-Price combined to run it 9 times that possession before Finley pushed it across the goal line for his first collegiate TD to jump the Tigers in front 7-0. And the Tigers stayed committed to the run, racking up 276 rush yards and 3 rushing scores.
To come out just pounding it like that, you know, it woke up South Carolina defense.
And it illustrated great offensive line play. But Finley also showed he can scoot. Orgeron downplayed his ability to move around the pocket this week, but he showed nimble feet and some burst, which Finley attributes to losing more than 20 pounds in prep for this season.
Night and day. And he didn't move that well in high school, but he lost some weight. He's worked on his, I'm sure he's jumping rope and working on his feet. He does everything he can, man. The guy is a workout animal.
My weight loss is a huge aspect in this success I'm having right now. Like everybody said, I came into LSU, it's an embarrassing number, but oh well, like 265. You know, I was huge. You know, a lot of the guys messed with me and said I would move to D tackle, so I kind of took that to heart. You know, so when quarantine hit, you know, COVID hit, and we went into quarantine, I took it upon myself to, you know, trim down and weight, and it's paying off well.
Destrehan's John Emery said after the game that Finley looked calm and composed the entire time he was in the game. I would also say extremely confident with every single one of his throws. And anytime a backup quarterback comes in and plays that well, people always start to wonder, will Coach Orgeron continue to ride the hot hand? But Coach O said after the game, as soon as Miles Brennan is ready and healthy to be their starting quarterback again, he's still their guy.
Is there any maybe controversy with when Miles comes back?
It might be on your part. I mean, everybody's just yearning for it. I can feel it. It ain't gonna be on our part. I tell you that. You know, I mean, Miles is our starting quarterback. But I know this: if Miles ain't doing well, I can put in TJ.
And Finley continued to show us why. By his third drive, he had his first touchdown pass to Terrace Marshall to make it 17-7. And last night he completed 81% of his passes for 265 and 2 scores.
2 people in the wrong place for LSU's defense.
And then came LSU's defense, a unit that looked like it belonged in the Big 12 against Mizzou, picked up where they left off. After 3 plays, the Gamecocks had knotted the game at 7.
In for a touchdown.
But once they settled down, their best play came from Eli Ricks, who was gifted this pick 6 by South Carolina's Colin Hill, and then flashed deuces on his way into the end zone.
The young freshman from California with the big pick 6.
That put the Tigers in cruise control, out in front 31-10 to end the half. Overall, this was the best game of the young season for LSU's D, and their pass rush was fairly effective, as Tigers freshman B.J. Ojulari recorded 3 sacks. But make no mistake about it, their style was very much bend and hope we don't break.
Down the sideline goes Kevin Harris.
Although the Tigers do deserve credit, they forced South Carolina into 3 missed field goals and buckled down when it counted. However, they also gave up 9 plays of 17 yards or more, and 6 of those plays were for chunks of more than 30.
We got a lot of things still to shore up on defense, especially in our coverage. Guys weren't running wide open. We still got to continue to fix it.
But like Finley said, this win might have given LSU their swagger back. And if they have to go into Auburn next week with a freshman at quarterback, it doesn't seem as daunting now as it once did. From Baton Rouge, Andrew Doak, 4th Down on 4.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Good stuff. Meanwhile, a tough season continued Saturday afternoon for Willie Fritz and the Tulane Green Wave as Central Florida ran wild. Bottom line, Tulane just couldn't get off the field Saturday afternoon in Orlando. The Golden Knights' tempo was fast. UCF rang up 689 yards of total offense. After all 3 of their second-half scores, Tulane tried onside kicks just to try to steal a possession. It didn't work. Nothing seemed to work. And Tulane's offense, which did some good things, just couldn't keep up.
You know, when you play a team like that, you got to do a great job of matching points with your offense. I thought at times we played well offensively, but also had a few times where we, didn't convert on 4th down. So, you got to get stops. We weren't able to do that defensively.
Tulane is now 2-4 overall, but winless. 0-4 in the American Athletic Conference. They'll host Temple Saturday at 11 a.m. It took the Pelicans a while to land a new head coach. Is Stan Van Gundy the right guy? We've got a ton of opinions ahead on 4th Down on 4. Before taking the Pelicans job, in his previous job as a basketball analyst, Stan Van Gundy was very critical of the Pelicans' commitment to playing defense. Now, fixing that will be one of his primary missions. Van Gundy, of course, signed a 4-year deal to lead a young and talented Pelicans team. We'll get a national perspective in a minute, but first, here's Ricardo LeCompte with local reaction.
Here comes Redick off the screen.
A group learning how to win in the NBA needs a coach that knows just how to do that.
The Utah Jazz hold on.
The Pels banking Stan Van Gundy's decade-plus head coaching experience and ability to teach will help a young team flourish.
He's a basketball mind is one of the words that someone used that I talked to, and he'll get the guys to play hard. And I think that lack of consistency that we saw with the Pelicans so much during the Gentry years, I think some of that will be gone.
Defensive effort was iffy from night to night. They were constantly making, young, boneheaded mistakes at the in late game situations. So I think bringing in a really smart coach who can understand how to teach them how to win, I think it's a win-win for everybody involved.
The 61-year-old returns to coaching after spending a year in the broadcast booth as an analyst for TNT. And although his last gig with the Pistons didn't result in the same type of success he had in Orlando or Miami, he's still a respected coach in the league. And that respect earns Van Gundy the opportunity and responsibility of molding the talents here in New Orleans, especially the generational one in Zion Williamson.
I think Zion doesn't mind being coached. I mean, he played for Coach K. So I think he'll be fine on that end. I do think if something pops up, I think people will go back to those, to the Shaq and end of the Dwight Howard era. But he's a guy that's smart enough to learn from, the relationship mistakes are something he may have made in the past. So I don't think it'll be a problem at all.
I think it's much bigger than just coaching Zion and telling him what's wrong and what he needs to do to get better. But he has to have a relationship where they feed off of each other, where he's inspired by Stan Van Gundy. And I think we didn't necessarily see that as much with Alvin Gentry as much as those guys liked him. And I think it's something that is going to be a huge requirement for Stan Van Gundy moving forward.
Forming a bond with Zion, very important, but Van Gundy must also develop a relationship with Jrue Holiday. The defensive specialist name being thrown around in a number of trade rumors right now. Holiday has a player option at the end of next season. But Holiday is a player that would fit in this new system.
Jrue's that kind of player that you plug him into a lot of teams and, they're a championship team. But, I've kind of just heard that, Van Gundy's really fond of Jrue and he wants him here. So I think this team stays intact.
I do think it helps a lot also that a different veteran on this team, J.J. Redick, has a history with Stan Van Gundy. That's something that's going to be really important to have a guy like J.J., highly respected in the Pelicans locker room, speaking up for Stan and coming in and saying, hey, I vouch for this guy. This guy's good. And I think having that buy-in from the other veterans is a big reason why you should probably keep them around and maybe see how far this thing goes.
Van Gundy will also have a big say on what the Pelicans do on draft night. Currently, the Pels hold the 13th overall pick and 3 picks in the second round.
This guy's a special talent in this league.
Reporting at the Smoothie King Center, Ricardo Lecomte, 4th Down on 4.
All right, thanks, Ricardo. Now to get a national perspective, we turn to our old friend Sean Devaney. He's a national NBA writer, has been for a long time. He now works for Forbes magazine. Sean, what are your impressions, first off, when you hear Stan Van Gundy and this young Pelicans team? How does it strike you right off the bat?
Well, first of all, I think one of the big questions a lot of us had going into the offseason with the Pelicans is what they were planning to do, not only with the coaching situation, but then with the personnel situation. And I think that with Stan, you really do get an answer to both of those questions. They brought Stan in to win and to win quickly. That means you're not going to see Jrue Holiday on the trading block, as a lot of teams had hoped we might see, or even J.J. Redick. It might mean that you see Derek Favors come back. They're going to want to keep some veteran guys. I think if they had gone with a younger guy, a less known name like Jamal Mosley or like Will Weaver, some of the guys who were rumored, then that would have been an indication that they're going to look to rebuild by trading some of these players. But with Stan, I think you get a pretty strong indication that what they're going to do is really lean into trying to win and trying to win quickly.
The one thing about this team, if you watch them, Sean, especially the games in the bubble, the defense by the end of the year was just atrocious. Do you think part of bringing Van Gundy in as a guy, look, he's known as a teacher and he's known as a defensive guy, right? I mean, it seems like a good fit in that sense. First thing I thought was, you got to have a coach who can teach him defense. Van Gundy seems like a guy who can. Agreed?
Yeah, points in the paint, they were 28th. Points off turnovers in terms of what they were giving up, they were 29th. They were a terrible team defending in transition. Those are all little things that you don't need to go out and sign somebody to fix. Those are discipline things. Those are coaching things. Those are things that are attention to detail. And that's what Stan Van Gundy's reputation has been. It didn't work so well his last stint in Detroit. You kind of put that aside and look at how he built himself in Miami as one of Pat Riley's guys. And certainly that's what that whole Miami system and the conditioning that they do and, the amount of work they do on drills before they even start talking about, how we're going to play defense, how we're going to play offense. That a lot of that discipline is something that Stan Van Gundy has learned from way back working with Pat Riley, and he brought that to Orlando. And you really saw Orlando was a team that did not beat itself. It didn't make these kinds of mistakes that if you watched the Pelicans, certainly in the bubble, they scored enough to where they should have won more games. They just couldn't defend anybody. And they kept making, giving up second chance points, giving up points off turnovers, as I mentioned. They were among the worst in the league with that. And that's something that Stan's got to come in and clean up.
Stan Van Gundy had been complimentary of the Pelicans roster even before he took this job. What is your impression of this Pelicans roster right now? Is this a roster ready to take a next step? And I don't mean ready to be the 8th seed in the playoffs. Clearly, they're good enough to do that now. Are they ready to compete to be one of the top 4 seeds, or at least do you see enough in this roster that they can get there in the next year or two?
Yeah, I think that you have to put it in the context of the Western Conference. And with what's happened in Houston, that's a team that seems to be on the way down. So some of the teams that have been competing for those spots are slipping down. But when you look at this roster top to bottom, then they should be able to be in that group at least of 4, 5, 6, 7 in the Western Conference. A team like Dallas comes to mind. The Pelicans should be able to get there, if not this year, then certainly in the coming year.
Sean Devaney, terrific job. Thank you for joining us. We are back with more 4th Down on 4 in a minute. At 6:30 Thursday night, we've got an Eye on the Black and Gold special to get you ready for a huge game in Chicago this weekend. The Bears are legit, and LSU will play Auburn on Halloween afternoon. That game will be right here on Channel 4 Saturday afternoon. We will have an Eye on the Tigers post-game special afterwards. It's a busy week ahead, but we are done for tonight. We're way out of time. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week on 4th Down on 4.
Fourth Down on 4 has been sponsored by Dornax, family owned and operated since